Hi, I'm Gerard Virga, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 3 of the Florida Family Law Attorney Podcast. And today I am honored to have Katie Bergman, who's a licensed mental health counselor, with us. Katie has an extensive career and has focused that career on families in transition. And I thought she'd be an ideal guest because as a family law attorney, I believe our job isn't just to resolve a case, it's to help families build a foundation for healing. And I think Katie and her professional expertise can help that process along because she deals with transition, and family law is nothing but a big transition. And so, Katie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what drove you to be a mental health counselor and to focus in on this area?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. First off, I'm glad to be here. So, what drove me to be a counselor? Gosh, it was a variety of things, but I was actually working back in schools, I guess about 15 years ago, and that's where it started for me. But as I went on throughout my career, I kind of segued into private practice, and then having my own children, I got certified in perinatal mental health, and then through my own experiences, have had some of my own transition, and that's kind of prompted me to get involved with families and help them through their transitions. So I think I was inspired by my own story, and so that's how I ended up here and helping families as they navigate all of the complexities of different transitions, whether it's through divorce or whether it's through, adding children to their family or whatever transition it might be. So deal with a variety of different transitions, and divorce is one of them.
Well, I think as a family law attorney and as the head of our law firm, one thing I've really come to appreciate is how much people do not like change and how hard it is for people to change, but how necessary it is in life to constantly change and adapt to change and how to handle those changes without letting anxiety and all these other emotions cloud your judgment. Would you agree with that?
My goodness. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we are ever evolving, and change is the only constant that I feel like everybody has in their life. There's always something changing or working towards the next change. And so, being comfortable with, okay, my life is going to, it's not going to be the same in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and being able to adjust and adapt to whatever circumstances, um, sorry about that, whatever circumstances come up, and be able to navigate the emotions that come with that, because anxiety is going to creep in. It's hard to get used to different things that happen throughout our lives and be able to manage the anxiety that comes with that, especially with things like family law matters.
Yeah, when you do family law for as many years as I have, I think I'm coming up on 20 years or more of just doing family law. Changes don't stop. Even
Yep.
after the divorce, sometimes people come in, they need a modification.
Hmm.
How they parent has to change because kids grow, kids adapt. And then I find that with technology and with the modern pace of society, if you will, change just comes faster and faster and faster. And you're evolving to new technologies. Kids seem to be kind of getting to growing up a lot faster.
Yeah.
And we have to help our clients. A lot of our clients are not one-time clients. They're with us for years going through this process and, trying to guide them, as life throws them different transitions as their kids grow, to give them the best advice possible and to help them navigate the legal aspects of that. Some of these clients, you end up with a kind of a personal relationship with them because you've been with them for so long, and you know their story and you know that what they've gone through and you want to see them succeed. And you take I don't know about you, but as a lawyer, I'm sure a therapist feels the same way. When they do successfully transition and things are going good and they've started that new chapter, it's something you feel pride in that you helped them get there, hopefully, that you played a part in that success story.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Some of my clients, I've had a few for several years now, and, to watch them go through those stages and to watch them, navigate the things that, are in their way, and to be successful at, whatever it is that they end up doing. It is something that I think, it feels really special and is really important, I think, in motivating to me as a therapist to be able to continue to kind of see that progress and be able to, be inspired by it. Yeah, I mean, same for us as well. Well, me specifically, I can't speak for anyone else, but to be able to give them the tools so that they can navigate, okay, this next change is coming, but now I'm a little bit more prepared for it because I have some of these things that I did from this last transition that I had in my life. So it's really inspiring.
Well, tell us how someone with your expertise in transitions, how that can be complementary to somebody who's navigating the family law court systems.
Yeah. So specifically from, a therapeutic standpoint, being able to come to therapy and to, have, first off, a confidential, safe place to talk about some of the things that they're going through. Specifically, if we're talking about, family law, a lot of these things are things that people don't or shouldn't be talking about in front of their kids. And so they need an outlet. People need, to be able to kind of an emotional dumping ground is what I call it to all of my clients. They need an emotional dumping ground where they can come and they can just word vomit everything that they're going through, everything that they're feeling, thinking, be able to kind of work that out verbally and learn some skills. A lot of what we deal with, a lot of what I deal with specifically with my own clients is, co-parenting, how to effectively co-parent. How can I speak to, my child's mother or father, and how can I do that in a respectful way, leaving the emotion out, in a way that's going to be effective communication. So we work a lot on that effective communication, being able to navigate that co-parenting dynamic and just, a variety of dealing with the anxiety of the transition, dealing with the emotional distress or behavior changes or, whatever different things that kiddos might have as a result of that. How do I parent my child now that this is happening? How do I talk to my kid about, okay, we're getting divorced? How do I tell them that? So there's so many things that come with that transition that I think parents, they've never had to navigate before. So how would they know how to do it? And it's going to be different with kids at different ages. And especially if you have multiple children, you're going to have to talk to them in a different way. You're going to have to co-parent them in a different way. It's going to look completely different from one child to the next. And so it's kind of, there's a variety of things that we have to navigate in that transition. And so therapy is going to be a really, really helpful place to do that. And, hopefully they'll, our clients gather some skills to be able to navigate those circumstances and transitions.
I think that what you said was spot on with the place to verbally work it out, because our clients often will call us, as their divorce lawyer, as their family law attorney, and they try to do it with us and they try to work it out with us. And we're always there. We want to listen. I don't want to be insensitive when I say this.
Sure.
Sometimes attorneys, we don't have those tools. Our tools are equitable distribution, child custody, what's the law, what's the next step in the procedure.
Yeah.
And really the law often focuses on just objective facts. Just, what are the facts? What's this? What does the law say? And so as a family law attorney over years, I think you do develop an ear for clients that are maybe in distress and, knowing when, hey, to back off and let them talk. But I can't stress enough the number of times I tell a client that all I can do is just give you advice like a gentleman sitting next to you at the bar, on a bar stool next to you, and you can vent to me. But I lack as an attorney the tools that you need to make this transition. And I recommend that, if you have insurance or if there's some kind of a program out there, maybe if you don't, that makes it cost effective, then, go talk to a therapist, get this off your chest, learn how to cope with it. Because in the years of experience I have, you can literally see the stress physically affecting their well-being. I have seen guys who start the divorce process who are a little chunky like myself, heavier set guys, and by the end they're bone thin. And they're not hitting the gym, and it's not due to health practices. It's literally the stress is taking a toll on them. And, I tell them that, I can help you through the process. I can be committed to your case, but you need help beyond what I can give you. And I think it's important people recognize that. And then with children, I will not talk to children in my practice as I don't want the children involved in the process. I don't think that's appropriate. I try to shield them from the process, which I think is what the law pretty much wants and dictates and has a firm position on, to try to shield them. But, I do not have the expertise, again, which you would have, to help talk to your children. And I thought, it's after doing this for 20 years, I never thought about what you said, but how do you have this conversation? And then how do you have this conversation with multiple kids in a household? Because I have 3 kids. Nothing is secret. So once you tell one kid, all 3 kids know.
Right.
How do you get them the information at an age-appropriate level in a constructive way, and let the cat out the bag that this is happening, and then deal with the immediate after effects and anxiety that are going to happen? So, Katie, I got a question for you. What's the most challenging thing that you see when helping children through a transition like this?
Specifically in high conflict divorce cases where maybe kiddos have been exposed to things that they shouldn't, or, parents maybe have talked about things that they shouldn't, or, said things about the other parent, or where children are more informed about the process than what they should be. That has such a negative impact on kids. Truly, kids should know about this much. They should know this is happening and not a whole lot more. Maybe eventually what the time sharing schedule will look like, so they can kind of mentally prep, okay, I'm going here on this day, I'm going here on this day. But outside of that, they shouldn't have any awareness about what's going on behind the curtain. They should be kind of, kept shielded from all of that. But when they're not, that can really be destructive to a kiddo who is developing, especially to, their self-esteem. They are half of each parent. So if one parent is talking, negatively about the other, they're going to internalize, okay, well, I'm half of that parent. So am I that thing too? Am I bad too? Because mom said this about dad, or dad said this about mom. And so, you have to be very careful, when you're speaking around your kiddos, that you're not, saying things, because they're so intuitive. They're going to pick up on even the smallest nuances. And so being really careful, especially with tone of voice, even word choice really matters when you're talking about the other parent. But when kiddos are exposed to things that they shouldn't be, and these high conflict situations where no matter what, parents just cannot seem to, be able to come together for the benefit of the kids, because that should be the number one focus. It doesn't matter that they're not in a relationship anymore. The focus should be the kids, and how can we keep things the most stable for them? Even though this big transition is happening, trying to keep the most stability for the kids. Things like being able to stay in their home if it's feasible, at least with part of the time sharing, being able to stay in their school, their neighborhood where they have supports. Those type of things are going to be really beneficial for kids. And, when they're removed from their supports or their school, their friends, those types of situations, it's going to have a really negative impact. And so things like, like I was saying, emotional distress, behavior changes, anger outbursts, difficulty sleeping, all of that's going to manifest and cause anxiety, a lot of depression a lot of the time, withdrawal. All of those mental health symptoms are a strong possibility when in those high conflict situations. So that would be, my biggest thing is effective co-parenting dynamics are super important to making sure that kiddos, they don't experience any trauma throughout the transition.
Well, one of the things that I, try to bring to the cases I work on and the people who ask me questions when I try to inform them is, no matter what happens in this case, you guys are still parents. No matter what the time sharing schedule looks like, no matter what the outcome is, you guys are still parents, and you have to parent. And sometimes I think people have a very hard time parenting when the case is going on, because the case is causing so much anxiety, and the case is becomes, unfortunately, the primary focus. And unfortunately, sometimes the children are left as kind of pieces on the board here of who's going to get what piece and where it's going to get moved. And there's not sometimes enough reflection on how is this really going to affect this young person, their development, how they move forward in their own personal lives, even as adults. which that kind of segues to something else I found that was really interesting about your experience, that you did some time working with the Gulf Coast Children's Advocacy Center.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you about your experience there. It's a great organization, and how, your trauma-informed perspective benefits families, and how that whole line of mental health being focused on trauma, how that's a benefit to a family who's transitioning through, like I said, one of the biggest, transitions a person can face. Their family and their mom and dad are not living together anymore. People who've been together for 10, 20 years now are starting over in a new world. And, that causes, I think, trauma at every level of the family. So can you, tell us about that, and, what listeners need to know about trauma and overcoming trauma and the effects of trauma on children and on themselves as they go through one of these cases?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, that experience working with Gulf Coast Children's Advocacy really helped me to develop my lens, and be able to really just kind of zoom in on, being able to identify when specifically kiddos are going through traumatic experiences, and be able to identify those symptoms that, that are associated. So, truly, like I said before, those symptoms of emotional distress and, withdrawal, behavior changes, anger outbursts, they're really common, across the board for the transition piece. And so being able to really look at the forest through the trees, so to speak, and see, okay, yes, these are common things that happen during a transition, but is this kiddo experiencing something a little bit more? Is this kiddo, experiencing trauma as a result of it? And how can we navigate that? And each case is so unique. I think it's really looking at each person's situation on a very much a case by case basis. Overcoming trauma, a variety of ways, and being able to help kiddos and really parents to build resilience and, overcome some of the things that they're going through. But, EMDR is one of the ways that we do that. So that stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is a really fancy way of saying we use eye movements to help really kids and adults alike reprocess their traumatic memories. So if there's any things like physical violence, which I hope, of course we hope not, but sometimes there is.
Unfortunately, there often is in these cases. There's domestic violence, issues. Those to me, really raise a lot of challenges helping an adult or the child move forward, through that. So how does the eye movement help somebody reprocess their thoughts? That's pretty intriguing.
Yeah. So I wish I knew the exact science, but I'm not really sure how it works in the brain, but it uses eye movements, which is called bilateral stimulation, to basically take those memories and reduce the intensity of the emotion associated with the memory. So if you're experiencing flashbacks, nightmares, things like that, those symptoms as a result of the trauma, the EMDR will help to reduce those symptoms and reduce the intensity of the memory that's associated with that. So something where you think of it, that happened in the past, and you maybe you feel like some really intense sadness associated with it, sometimes some tearfulness. EMDR will take that emotion that's kind of in conjunction with that memory and reduce the intensity of it, so that when you're able to think of it and maybe not cry about it, or you're able to remember it and talk about it with somebody if you feel like you need to. And so EMDR is a really effective way. It's scientifically based, and it's a really structured therapy. So it's like this set of steps that you go through, not necessarily like talk therapy. When you think of like your traditional therapist, you go and you're like, verbalizing, whatever's going on in your life and whatnot. But it's very structured. So there's steps that the therapist will follow before you get to the bilateral stimulation piece. So it's really effective. It's probably the most effective way to work through trauma. I use it with a lot of my clients, and I know a lot of our other practitioners do as well. And we've seen really good results with it. And part of the training is that we actually have to reprocess our own trauma in the training, which I was not quite prepared for. But
Wow.
I got to firsthand experience, the reprocessing of my own stuff in the training. And so kind of can vouch for, how it works and the effectiveness of it.
That's really, really cool. And thank you for, for
Yeah.
sharing that. Like that's a tool I was unaware of. And, you know, that you did it yourself and processed your own traumatic memories. That's very
Mhm.
personal. And, thank you for sharing that with everyone listening.
Yeah.
You know, I think you kind of touched on this before, but, as you transition from an intact, a lot of cases, an intact family with, two parents under one household. And now you're in this co-parenting role, but you're two separate households. And we've had the anxiety and uncertainty of the case, or the hard feelings sometimes that follow after the divorce case or custody case. What processes or steps or techniques can you use as a mental health counselor to help parents be better at the co-parenting and the communication and all the things necessary to create happy and successful environments for these children to thrive?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it really starts with the parents. They, like you said, the stress of going through such a difficult transition really has physical and emotional effects on the person. And so, start with yourself, making sure that each parent, it has healthy habits, they're sleeping well, exercising regularly, eating, healthy meals, things like that. And really going to a therapist to work through that, all of the emotions verbally, and just be able to kind of use it as the emotional dumping ground. And I think starting with healthy parents, that's going to be number one as far as healthy environments for children. And so, if a parent is healthy, the kiddos are going to be more likely to be able to function a little bit better because mom and dad are good. Mom and dad are healthy, they're able to parent, pretty much the way they did before, but start there. Healthy parents equals healthy kids for the most part. So as far as the co-parenting dynamic, going to family therapy, you don't have to be married to go to family therapy. I think it's really helpful actually if, parents go to family therapy just to effectively co-parent and learn how to communicate with each other in a safe environment where, there's kind of a mediator, which would be the therapist, and they're able to work out some of the difficulties of communication and things like that in a safe environment where it's not going to get aggressive or hostile. So that's another really helpful way to work through some of those things that, not quite sure how to navigate and, just be able to do things in a way that is, healthy for kids and families alike.
Let me ask this. So in that dynamic, you'd have both parents coming to you at the end of a family law case, learning to communicate, learning to co-parent. Is there a family therapy where we bring the kids into that, or is that something the kids should always stay out of? Or have you ever had experiences where the kids and the mom and the dad and everybody's in a joint session, or is that just something that's frowned upon in the mental health community?
I think it depends on the kid and the kid's age specifically. A teenager is going to have a different, developmental level and understanding than a 6-year-old. So
Right.
I think it's really, really depends. But, if it's a teenager who's going to understand things and be able to process through some of those things a little bit differently, then yeah, potentially that might be helpful. It might be helpful to see that, okay, mom and dad are going to have, kind of a united front here. They're going to be kind of consistent across the board, we hope. And so that could be helpful for a kid that's maybe trying to figure out, okay, well, how is this going to work? And a lot of the times we see kids pushing the boundaries a little bit, which is, developmentally probably pretty appropriate given the circumstances. And we're going to be, trying to figure out, okay, what can I get away with now that mom and dad aren't in the same household?
No, no. Nobody's kids do that. Nobody kids try to parent shop or anything, especially or take advantage of a new situation to, you know,
Right.
yeah, that's a daily, no matter what your family law status is
Mhm.
or what's going on in your household. That's a pretty constant, I think,
Mhm.
everywhere. You see parents sometimes coming together in these counseling sessions to kind of check that and work on the unified front that, hey, we're both mom and dad. We may not be in the same household anymore, but we're still going to have the same ground rules or getting on the same page as to the ground rules to keep the consistency that the child needs in place, even though this transition has occurred.
Yeah, exactly. It's really, I think, easy to lose that consistency really quickly in separate households. And so having a safe place where, families can come together, doesn't even have to be super often, but just to, okay, here's what we're going through, here's what we're navigating, this is us getting on the same page, being able to communicate the same message to our kids so that, we're not having that, okay, well, mom said no to this, but let me go try dad now and see how that works. And, and some of those things, it's really, really challenging because they come up and we're like, this is a tough one where, our co-parent we may not be sure how they would feel about it. And so this gives, an opportunity to talk about that as well in a place where, it's devoted to that specifically
Right.
because, we all get busy and, we'll talk about that later and then it never happens sort of thing.
Well, I think, too, innately, it sends a message to the child that
Mhm.
despite mom and dad's differences, despite the transition, they still care about me enough to come together.
Yes,
And
for
whether
sure.
I like that I'm the subject of the counseling or that you're going to set some boundaries on me, that they can still work, in concert for the best interest of that child. I think that's an innate benefit of it, from the child's perspective that you would see that.
For
Um,
sure.
this is a little kind of off topic, but it's something that I see a lot. And I know that Florida law says that either parent can take the child to see a mental health professional unless there's a
Mhm.
parenting plan that states otherwise.
Mhm.
And what we see a whole lot of is parents who perhaps object to the counseling, thinking that the other parent is using it as a tool in the litigation or is setting up a modification or one parent is actually doing that, and that's the main goal is what they're trying to do. And so there comes like this circle of distrust,
Mhm.
and I think sometimes that prevents children from getting this type of therapy to help them with the transitions. Is there any way in your practice, like if mom brings the child to you, do you contact dad, or is that a no, or is that something you do, in most cases? Do you try to talk to both parents or, to avoid the appearance of,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just the counselor mom picked, or I'm just the counselor dad picked. And then we end up with a battle of counselors and the kid maybe getting different counseling from different people. And, have you ever had to deal with that?
I'm sure there's been a situation where it's been, difficult situations, but our general kind of rule of thumb is to have parents informed
Mhm.
and to know what's going on with their kiddo. Now, I say that, but your kiddo does have confidentiality. So
It's
we're
something
not going
we have to remind them all the
to.
time that I'm gonna call Katie in as my star witness, my child's counselor. And I was like, Katie will not be able to testify as to what the child said unless the court appoints a guardian ad litem or an attorney ad litem, that's handled and the court makes a determination that that would be in the child's best interest to divulge the privilege because it's privileged information. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, we have to bring that up constantly. And, I prefer doing a social investigation
Mhm.
if we have those type of issues, because that's a forensic kind of psychology or counseling role that's not meant for the treatment. I
Mhm.
do not personally like to try to muddy the waters with treatment and evidence. Treatment's treatment, in my book, I want people to get treatment. I think the law wants people to get treatment and to keep that privileged. And treatment should be for treatment. And if you want evidence, then there's forensic methods that you can use, like the social investigation or other things like that to get that, but leave the treatment alone.
Exactly.
Only under rare circumstances can I think of any times where I've brought a counselor to court. I try to, not do that. But yeah, do you get asked a lot by parents to come to court or to divulge privileged information?
It's one of the things, actually, whenever we do an initial intake, and this has been stressed to me from like the moment that I graduated from grad school. One of the things that we initially will tell families whenever we hear that there's some sort of custody situation going on is,
right,
there are very limited circumstances where that would ever be appropriate. And so I kind of preface the whole treatment process with, this is probably not going to happen. And so, it's inappropriate on a lot of levels, because if you're seeing a child and then, develop rapport with and trust with this kiddo, and this kiddo's working through treatment, and then you go and you're testifying against dad, and so now dad can't see child, or whatever the situation may be, just kind of making that up, that kiddo's not going to trust you anymore, and their treatment is kind of gone with the wind. And so, that's one of the reasons, but there's a whole slew of reasons why it would be inappropriate. A social investigation is going to be very different. It's not going to be, treatment where the trust and rapport is developed. It's going to be somebody who's, potentially doing an observation of how a parent would interact with a child, or gathering evidence, that's specific to the parenting and how that parent, parents the child, or what, techniques parents use to parent children, or things like that. It's going to be a lot more in-depth with regards to the parents specifically, and not treatment for the child. If a kiddo comes into a therapy session and they're like, well, mom was mad at me for not doing the dishes, like, those are normal things, but a lot of the times I think they can be, used in a way that could be malicious. And so that's another reason why we wouldn't ever do that. It's going to really take that rapport and trust that was built with that kiddo, and really just to kind of be completely counterproductive.
Yeah, trust, I would think, in your trust as a family law attorney, that's what we have to sell. That's what, I can't guarantee an outcome of a case. I can't guarantee all the facts should go your way. I can't guarantee a ruling. But, what I can hopefully, offer you is a person that you can trust, and we can develop a sense of trust in that attorney-client relationship where it's productive. And if that trust is gone, then the relationship goes with it. And I've never really contemplated that as a counselor who might find themselves drug into the court system. But yeah, I would see how that would damage the trust and really be an impediment to treatment. So you recently became a social investigator as well, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
So the way it was taught to me, and I am not a social investigator or mental health professional, that the social investigation is forensic and not treatment. Can you explain the difference between what is treatment versus what is a forensic evaluation?
Yeah, it's more based on, like I said, observation and fact gathering more than it is on. So if you're looking at treatment, it's going to be sets of experiences, sometimes as they happen in real life, utilizing like cognitive reframing is one of the theoretical approaches that therapists use. And so that would be like, so some negative beliefs that a person might have, whether it's about themselves or just in general. A therapist might say, have you tried thinking about it from this perspective? Or have you maybe reframed it to think this different way for whatever the situation might be. So a social investigation is going to look at, for example, they might do an observation of each parent with the child and how they observe the child and the parent interact together. Gathering of communication and records and things like that, where they're able to take and look at the interactions that are occurring between the two parties and really decipher, the way that somebody might be parenting, or the way that somebody might be interacting or behaving, or things like that. So it's going to be much more based on fact gathering and finding different pieces from either the past or the present and being able to decipher, is this person parenting in an effective way that's healthy for the child? Is this person co-parenting effectively? And just make a determination from all of that evidence.
Well, let me ask you a question. As a lawyer, my job is to present evidence to the court and, basically inform the court through that process of certain issues. Sometimes through motions, sometimes at trial, through evidence that we're selecting and we're using. But what should a judge or a family law attorney or even a parent be really looking for and focusing in to show that a child is really having a difficult time with this transition? What are the warning signs? What are the things that we're looking for? Because as an attorney, that would help me be able to present better evidence to the court. As a judge, it would help the judge be able to filter out what is important and what's not. And of course, parents, if their kids are having these issues, they need to know what they're looking for so they can get them the help they need. Can you answer that for us?
Yeah. And that can look, more minor, behavior changes, they can really range. They can range from something as, if you're thinking about a young child that's 6 years in age or something, or 4 years in age, they're going to have tantrums, right? Their tantrums might be increased, to be expected. But when you're thinking about the escalation of symptoms, that can really range to, we hope not, but things like self-harm. But that would be a definite warning sign. Difficulty sleeping, big disturbances in sleep. That's another big one. I think that there's a variety of different things, but look at academics. That's another big one. Were they previously, a pretty decent student, and now their grades have really plummeted? Physical symptoms also, is this kiddo having some really different physical symptoms? The kids can, manifest these things in somatic ways. So headaches, stomach aches, other physical manifestations will present sometimes, and a lot of gut issues specifically. Mental health is the gut is the brain, of the digestive system. And so your mind and your gut are so closely connected. And we're going to do a podcast episode on that eventually, because I will die on that hill. But it's something I'm super passionate about, the gut-mind connection, and how, the things that we do, the healthy habits, what we eat and what we put in our body, how it affects mental health in such a tremendous way. So anyway, all of that to say, there's a lot of physical manifestations of symptoms, but they can really range. And I think as you get into more severe symptoms, sometimes even suicidal ideation with kiddos, which is really sad to see, but happens more than you think, honestly. Obviously, those are big red flags, and kiddos definitely should be in treatment if they aren't.
Well, thank you for going over that, because while some of those might seem obvious, I think that sometimes we just operate that kids are like, they're going to bounce back, that life's going to go on for them. And the focus kind of sometimes shifts to the parents and their problems and their, whatever they're focused on in the litigation or in the case. And we sometimes lose track of, hey, the grades are not necessarily bad because the kid's having a rough year. The grades are bad because there's an underlying stress going on, and the child maybe isn't just bouncing back like rubber, and that they are going to need some help to get through this as well. I wanted to leave kind of off with this one question for you, and it's an open-ended question, but if you had your day and you could get up on your soapbox and you could tell judges, lawyers, families going through this, anything you wanted to, and give them one piece of just advice that you feel strongly about, what would that be?
Consistency for the kiddo, in whatever way that looks, is going to be the most beneficial. And really, we're creatures of habit, right? So, kids, adults, and consistency is going to help us to be the healthiest that we can be. And so, I feel strongly about that. And, I think that, especially children struggle with, these transitions between households, and which is inevitable. And with family law specifically, it's going to happen. Those kinds of things are really, switching between households is really common. But whatever consistency can be maintained is going to be healthiest for the kiddos in that situation.
Well, Katie, can you tell the listeners, if they have questions about transition or, need to get their child some help going through, a transition like this, they need to get some mental health services, where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can get in touch with us at the therapy room. So you can give us a call. Our number is 850-520-3321, or you can go to our website, www.therapyroomflorida.com. And we have one of those little forms where you fill out the information and it'll shoot us an email so we can get back to you, or you can request an appointment right through the website.
That's great. Now, I believe that you're a veteran podcaster because you guys have your own podcast, I believe.
Yeah,
what's the name of your podcast, and where could someone go to subscribe to your podcast?
Yeah, so our podcast is called The Therapy Room Podcast, and you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. It's pretty much on all of the platforms, and we have a variety of topics, and we release a new episode every 2 weeks. So I think it's Friday is our published date. And so we have topics ranging from one of our most recent ones was toxic relationships. That was a fun one that came out around Valentine's Day. Different topics every 2 weeks, and all on mental health and how it relates to people, and different tips and strategies, and, sometimes diagnosis specific. So lots of good information on that.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for taking your time today and sharing your experiences and knowledge with us and all the families who are going through this. And, it means a lot to us. And to everybody who listens to this, remember to, like, share, and subscribe. The more followers, the more information we can get out to families who need this information. And that's the whole purpose of the podcast, is to help families through these transitions, to help them get the best knowledge possible so that they can help their kids through the process, that they can maintain their own health and stability, and hopefully, maintain a sense of resilience, and they can work on moving forward and building better futures. So thank you, Katie. And we will definitely have you back on and delve into some of the stuff in more detail. Okay.
Sounds great.
Thank you.